Thank you, Dr. Levitt. Mr. Hediger, would you read the resolution so that we could move on to questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Board President, Madam Superintendent, board officers, members of the Board of Public Education. We do have a recommendation for the board's action. This is board agenda item under our regular board meeting today, July 16, 2020, for a modification to the academic calendar for school year 2020-2021. Based on the unprecedented impacts of COVID-19, the increasing amount of confirmed cases in Chatham County, and the high rate of transmission shown on the 14-day community spread index in our area, the district seeks to delay the start of the 2020-2021 school year by 2 weeks for the first day of instruction occurring on Wednesday, August 19th, 2020. The delay supports the district's goal to ensure student and staff safety in a manner that mitigates exposure during a period of high transmission. A delay will also provide critical time for staff training and preparation for a return to teaching and learning, the implementation of new safety procedures, and preparation to ensure facilities are ready for social distancing protocols. Under the Strategic Waiver School System contract, the district is authorized to make calendar modifications with board approval that deviate from existing State Board of Education rules for the school year, and it is further supported by resolution of the State Board of Education as authorized under OCGA 20-2-168C2 to depart from the strict interpretation of the terms of school year and school day. Calendar has been reviewed by administration and provides the following school year 2020-2021 calendar modifications. Offers 170 days of instruction, provides 12 days of pre-planning and training before the first day of instruction, begins the school year on August 19, 2020, begins the school year in a virtual e-learning district-wide model, adds 2 staff planning days for teachers at the end of the school year, includes the strategic use of district-wide e-learning days on November 3rd, which is the 2020 election day, and of course many of our school sites are used as polling sites. Also at the start of the second semester and after St. Patrick's Day. Thus, be it resolved, upon the recommendation of the superintendent, that the board approve the modifications to the 2020-2021 academic school calendar in support of mitigation efforts that limit the potential for exposure to the COVID-19 virus during a time of increased community spread, and that allows additional staff preparation time for a safe return to teaching and learning.
You've heard the recommendation. Is there a motion to that effect? Dr. Hoskins-Brown moves. Ms. Hall seconds. Dr. Hoskins-Brown. Anything?
I just want to thank the superintendent and the staff for the information and all the work that went into this plan. It clearly took a lot of work. It took the 135 members of the task force who all contributed, and I just want them to know that no bit of information is unused or unneeded in what's been put together. This is a very well-developed plan, as the superintendent said, that is not perfect. But it shows an extraordinary amount of consideration, and I'm looking forward to the comments of my colleagues.
Ms. Hall, anything?
I just want to say to our public that every one of us on the board has taken a lot of time to consider all of the information that we have received, both here locally, nationally, about this pandemic. And I fully support going forward with the recommendations made today, hoping, of course, that as soon as possible, we will be able to return to our in-person learning. But we thank everybody on the staff, Dr. Levitt, your entire cabinet, everyone who has helped us get to this point.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Other board members, Ms. Wade.
Cannot believe we're here, y'all. The last place we wanted to be in March. Regretfully, I support the decision to return to virtual school learning for now. I think it is the first step in a slow move to return to school. As a parent, as a very well-informed parent, I was prepared to send my children back to school, and I think it can be done safely. However, as a board member, We are not there as a district or as a community, and there is no plan B. This has been presented to us as the only option. I know that everyone has worked incredibly hard. 208 has been open for business all along, and I know everyone's worked incredibly hard and considered everything, and it's a no-win situation. I really appreciate Dr. Davis providing us with a lot of information this morning. I think it's really good to be working hand in hand with the Public Health Department, and he answered our questions, and I really appreciate that, and for him sharing his time with that. What we have learned is that everyone has an opinion, and we've all become little mini epidemiology experts. Overall, the community input, as you saw from the emails you received, is very divided. I counted them up, and my emails pro and con were equal. There are thorough, reasonable input from both sides. We had physicians and pediatricians and other healthcare workers supporting in-person instruction. Many, many teachers want to come back and do not want to see us start virtually. They've asked and almost begged for us to return to school. Most national organizations, both in the healthcare field and in the education field, support returning to in-person learning. And I think our main goal is how we get back to that as soon as possible. The reality is most people are no longer completely isolating. People have expanded their quarantine bubble, and most people have returned to in-person work environments. The reality is many never left in-person work environments. 208 has been open for meetings, and office is full, and people are working there. Children throughout the community are participating in camps and sports. Drive by Datham Park any afternoon, and you'll see football and soccer practice. Many of our schools are having athletic conditioning. So you can come to school for sports, but not learning. Our community does not look like it did in March, and our schools should not either. With proper safety measures, we can keep people safe. With that, I want to talk about first, online learning, and second, the slow transition back to school. Online learning. While some people had positive experiences in the spring, most people that I've heard from did not, and I have shared with y'all my own family's real challenges with it. We did not hear from 250 middle school students from the moment we switched to online learning. 250 students in middle school never tuned in. Kids are not just slipping through the cracks, they are plummeting through the cracks. I know the superintendent is committed to making the online learning experience better this fall, but I have some suggestions and expectations. Like the parent that spoke to us earlier, we need to have a full scheduled regular school day. Kids need to wake up, they need to log on, they need to have the principal greeting them, and they need to start class. I've shared with you that my sister in Atlanta Public Schools, when they transitioned to virtual, they were on school on a Friday. Monday, they were online. At 8:30, the entire school was logging on, the principal was greeting them, and they had a full school day. We have got to replicate the school and the online learning, and it must be mandatory. We can't have pre-recorded videos or links with assignments as a substitute for teaching. We need actual instruction. There are tons of opportunities online to interaction. You can do live polls, you can do student presentation, group projects, but we've got to equip our teachers to be able to teach online and engage our students. I'd even consider optional outdoor opportunities for class meetup, such as a park or a playground, so that we can recreate the classroom in a safe environment. Today's report has no details on online learning, and the meat is what the parents in our community are really craving. Parents need this information as soon as possible to plan and prepare. Even I on the board don't really know what this online learning management system means. Does that mean everyone's logging on in the same way? Are we still gonna have Zoom and Google Classroom or all these different things? So we need to know what it looks like day to day. I know a lot of people are looking at private school who say they will open. That's disappointing because we've worked so hard to bring more people into the public school system. The sooner we can get these details out, the better. I was hoping for that information today. I can say I'm super excited for the online platform. I also think we'll be able to use it during hurricane season this fall, unfortunately. For those parents who do not want their children isolated at home in the absence of school, here is what is happening throughout our community. Informal mini classrooms are popping up throughout the county with parents coordinating online learning together to create social interaction for kids, structures for families, and relief for parents. I am already a part of a group of 6 moms doing that for 6th grade. Faith-based and nonprofit communities are working together to create online learning environments for kids. To think about what that means, tons of resources and human capital throughout our community are being spent to create mini learning environments while schools, where kids should be, remain closed. It's good that everyone's coming together to create these environments, but it really should be happening in the schools. As we move forward, here are my priorities. Our buildings should not be shuttered. We need our schools open. We need staff in the schools, teachers in the classrooms. That is the critical first step to reopening. This creates reliable technology for teachers. There were lots of teachers in the fall or the spring who had trouble logging in, who didn't have computers, had weak Wi-Fi. It was too windy, and so the Wi-Fi didn't work, and they couldn't have their daily Zoom. Once we get teachers back in the classroom, we can see how it looks to come into work every day, which most of us are doing anyway, and that you come in with your mask and you get your hand sanitizer and you go into your classroom and you're socially distanced, which is very easy to do in your classroom. I'd even like to have a time where parents can schedule a time to come to the media center and check out a book with their child, make the school nurse available. School buildings should be open for business, even if kids are learning from home, regulated, controlled, safe, but open and accessible. Safety can be done if we follow the CDC guidelines. We have this chart. I love this chart, which says everyone's concerns. Most of these we can easily do. So we can address most of the teachers' concerns and make our schools safe and bring them back. I know we hear a lot about childcare for our teachers, and I get it. As a working mom, I'm sympathetic and I understand the challenges. Many parents continued to work throughout the shutdown, and they've been dealing with this same issue of childcare since March. Now, we could have a greater discussion on why working moms have had the greatest burden in this pandemic, why our female teachers say they need to stay home to care for their children, but their spouses do not, why our society does not seem to recognize the critical need for accessible childcare regardless of a pandemic, and how childcare disproportionately impacts women. What I do know is that working moms are the most resourceful people around. They're creative and resourceful, and they can get it done. I have no problem with teachers bringing children into schools if that's managed. Hopefully, if you're a teacher and you have a second grader, your second grader's online learning is so robust and good that they're able to sit in your classroom while you're teaching 11th grade physics. So if we can master online learning, get everyone on the same schedule, it can support everyone. Regarding our return to school, I think there is no way that after Labor Day, we are bringing 37,000 children back into the school system. I just don't think that's realistic. Today, we heard that the index is at 536 and that it really needs to be below 100. It's based on a 14-day average, and we still have July 4th and the Labor Day spikes. So I think while this calendar only goes up to Labor Day, I think it's really unrealistic to think that we would not be back until Labor Day. What I would like to see is a push to bring our pre-K and kindergarten kids back after Labor Day, and maybe even first and second grade. The superintendent has acknowledged and the state has acknowledged that these children do not do well at all in online learning. Our online learning academy was only approved for 3rd through 12th grade. So I would like to see at least our pre-K and K kids come back in Labor Day and make a real commitment to get those kids back in the school. We can use our larger spaces like our cafeterias and our gyms for social distancing. The rate of transmission is the lowest among our younger kids. It can still be voluntary. We can still offer an online option, but I think it's critical that we get these little people back in school as soon as possible. Second, I would make SPED and ESOL students the second priority. I'd even consider opening Georgia Coastal Comprehensive. These children, both SPED and ESOL, do not do well on an online learning platform, and it's critical that we get them in. I haven't heard much about IEPs and 504s today. We know it looks different in the pandemic, but I think if we can get these kids back in school, even if it's just one day a week or for an hour a day or something, it's really, really critical to get those kids back in. Again, it would be controlled, regulated by appointment, but acknowledging that those children benefit from being in the school building. And then finally, I think it's a priority to get our 6th graders and our 9th graders back to school, because those are the children transitioning to new schools. That's where that school community is created. And that's really what is lost, I think, significantly for those kids. Finally, I think this board needs to get back to being in person. The county commission has been back in person for over a month. The city hosted a hearing and a meeting this week that I attended. I think we need to lead by example. If we're asking people to come back in the school buildings, we need to show up for our meeting in person. It can be done safely with the panels, with the masks, with social distancing, and we need to be back and lead by example. So those are my comments on this. I do hope we soon hear a lot more about what online learning looks like, and I hope we're really creative in our outreach. I'm worried about those 250 middle school kids that we never heard from. How do we get to them? How do we tell them what's going on? I think we can lean on our outreach teams and our nonprofits who are serving those communities to get the word out. But I look forward to the first day of school and all the back to school pictures on August 19th. And I hope that we can slowly push these, particularly the more vulnerable populations, back into the school buildings. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wade. I have Ms. Hall and Mr. Johnson.
I just wanted to comment, Dr. Buck, that I think we should have had some protocol. If I had realized that each of us would have this kind of time, we each would have had our thesis ready, you know, and taken the time to explain to our public why we plan to vote the way we do. So I think in the future, when it's something like this, if that's protocol, that we all need to be aware of it. And rather than trying to be brief, we get a chance to say to the world what our thoughts are.
Thank you, Ms. Hall. Ms. Johnson, please. Mr. Johnson, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're at a pivotal moment in history of public education in our country, state, county. At this point, we could probably all write a dissertation on COVID-19 with the daily information we have received over the past 4 months. Like many of the citizens of Chatham County have reached out to me and the rest of the board, I personally know people who have had the virus. Some of them have been worse off than others. I am thankful that each of them have made a full recovery or is on the road to recovery. I would like to thank the work of the task force that has done the thoughtfulness for the reopening plan. What needs to be said? I am tired of people in the public, pundits on TV, and elected officials from Washington to Bay Street saying they know best. I also find it laughable when any of these elected officials say not to play politics when someone disagrees with them. Both parties have turned COVID-19 into a political football to score political points with their base. We, the School Board for Public Education for the City of Savannah, the County of Chatham, are voted in as nonpartisan elected officials. I say we act as such and truly serve the citizens that have given us the honor to be here and respect what they want and what they need. We are not here to play politics. We are here to ensure every child in Chatham County receives the best education humanly possible. We have students who need extra help that can only be given face-to-face. We have families who cannot pay for childcare, nor can they be at home because they must go to work. In order for this to work for all students and ensuring no child falls between the cracks, we need more time and bold action. We need to have mobile hotspots put around the county so we know every child has access to Wi-Fi 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We need to make sure we have enough special education teachers and directors that are willing to go into homes and give that portion of our population the proper instruction they need. We need to ensure those students with IEPs are given the same level of instructions as they would be if they were in one of our buildings. Teachers should not be forced to come into the buildings for training and online instructions. They too have the same worries the rest of the population has with possible spread and having someone tend to their children while at work. We need to let families get their personal items that have been at school sites for the past 128 days. We need to let families return district property like media center books. We need to ensure there's enough time to fully and professionally train each and every teacher how to use the learning management system to its fullest capability before expecting them to teach with it. We need the time to be able to distribute the portable devices to those students who need them. I am also worried about those children who are physically and mentally abused who we cannot be able to track if they're not in our buildings. If those items are not fully addressed, then we will end up going backwards as a district. Over the past 4 years, I have started to see the gaps between all demographics starting to shrink due to the hard work of the teachers and the staff of this district. If we do not focus on our most vulnerable, then we will not be able to continue that success. Reopening has given me more phone calls, texts, Facebook messages, and emails than anything we have voted for over the past 4 years. And to be honest, all those responses have been about 50-50 of opening or virtual. I have received political threats if I did not vote a certain way. I have also received sympathy for the vote we are going to take today, knowing we are going to upset a lot of people no matter how we vote. I wish the district would have done another parent survey. We kept hearing the survey was done before the spike in the cases, so the results would have been different. That's great, but let's prove that. I wish we would delay the start of school until after Labor Day so we had time to do things right. to get teachers trained on the platform, and to have schools fitted for safety measures for when we were able to return to the classrooms. I wish we were given more opportunities besides the take it or leave it option of online learning. There should be an option to allow those parents who want to send their children to school to be able to. And those staff members who want to go back in person can. For those families that do not want to send their children back, they need to be able to have that option as well. We also need to give parents, students, the community as a whole dates when we will update them on the situation if we're going to extend online learning, or we're going to change, or we're going to start opening up the buildings for those parents who want to. I have looked at all the data that has been given us, and I have researched. I've talked to doctors and nurses. I have asked for people to call me, text me, and email me, so I know what is profoundly important to the citizens of Chatham County. Most importantly, I pray to God to give me the wisdom to do what is right. It has been 128 days, the last time the school district saw normal. And I do not know, and I feel we will never go back to that again. I do know the public need to feel some sort of normalcy and control. The public is also crying out for more than one option. Webster defines option as 1, an act of choosing. 2, the power or right to choose, freedom of choice. 3, something that may be chosen. So this is not an option for the public. They will not have the right to choose what is best for them, nor are we allowed to even vote on the proposal, only the calendar. We have a moral, ethical, and legal responsibility to educate the children of Savannah Chatham County. I do not want to be known as the board who stood in the way of this challenge. I want to be known as the board who stood for surpassing this responsibility. We need to not only educate our children, we also need to be leaders in and for the communities we serve. I know that each of our votes here today will be blasted by some and praised by others. I know we have each come to our individual conclusion of what is not just best for our family and our situation. I know we each have our own personal feelings about this recommendation. With all of my concerns, with knowing that in-person learning is best for my own child, and with thoughtful meditation and prayer, I will be supporting the recommendation of the superintendent. I want to be able to work with her and the staff to mitigate as many of these concerns as quickly as possible. And I look forward to going back to in-person learning and to seeing COVID-19 in our rearview mirrors. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Johnson, I have Mr. Catchmore.
Thank you, Dr. Buck. So before diving into the recommendation and the plan, comments about the plan we heard today, I just wanted to make a few general observations based on some of the communications I've received, and I know we've all received from constituents and members of the community. First, as a general matter, I think we need to do a better job teaching and helping students understand the scientific method. I say that because it's okay to state your best opinion based on available facts, and then to modify your opinion as new facts come out. Changing your opinion as new facts come out is science. It's not a conspiracy. It's not being wrong or confused. Second, I think we need to do a better job of helping students think critically about sources of information. We all say this, but I still don't understand why smart, accomplished, successful people will believe something they read on social media, posted by someone who isn't a scientist or a doctor, over people who are scientists or doctors and are on the healthcare front lines and specialists in their fields. We've talked about gaps in science and gaps in critical thinking. Those are two that we should address. Third, it's unfortunate that schools and school districts are being asked to address broader societal issues and not their primary function, which is education. As Julie and Michael alluded to, for every communication I get about we need kids back in school, I get another one that says, how dare you think about putting kids back in school? But the issues that drive a lot of these comments are not necessarily education related. I get lots of comments about the fear of losing jobs, of losing housing, of losing the ability to buy food because a parent needs to go to work. The school district shouldn't be, but is bearing the brunt of broader societal issues related to healthcare, employment, housing, food, childcare, and the lack of a safety net as part of addressing this pandemic. Countries that are successfully moving forward have addressed or attempted to address these issues, and we haven't. I keep hearing that other countries have opened schools, so we can too. Those other countries, however, first severely limited community spread, and we have not. On one day last week, for example, the entire country of Germany had a total of 159 new COVID cases. That's the entire country of Germany. On July 14th, 2 days ago in Chatham County, just Chatham County, we had 194 new cases. Dr. Davis's data from earlier today confirmed the alarming rise in cases and hospitalizations. Citizens in those other countries banded together for the common good to defeat the virus, something we haven't done here. Michael said it, it's become a divisive political issue. Unfortunately, rather than a cause we can rally around as Americans for the collective good, and it's disappointing. So with those general observations, I have some comments about the virtual start recommendation. And like Michael and Julie, I am disappointed that there's only one option in front of us. But I will say I am supporting the recommendation and will vote yes. So here are my issues, and I share some of the same issues Julie and Michael identified. First, I see the data showing a sharp rise locally in cases and hospitalizations. And in a vacuum, if we were focused solely on student and staff health and safety, I would agree with virtual learning almost indefinitely until we could minimize or eliminate risk. But we don't live in a vacuum. The weekly $600 CARES Act payment for those who are getting it is going to run out shortly. There are lots of parents, including teachers, who can't stay home with their students. And there are a lot of students who will struggle to thrive in a virtual setting, particularly special education, ESOL, and pre-K and young elementary students. There are also employers that might be able to adjust to a 2 or 3 day work week for employees who can't work from home, but can't accommodate an employee who can't work from home being perpetually absent. And I've had employers call me and say, I'm going to have to lay off people if they can't come to work. There are limited childcare options, there are childcare challenges, and there's little or no social safety net for what's happening with this pandemic. I've said it before, and we've all said it, we're in an untenable situation. We're weighing the potential continued spread of the virus and potential health impact on students and staff in the broader community versus the impact of keeping 38,000 students home and the potential loss of income, employment, housing, and the rise in evictions, hunger, and related issues. Given the real world impact of the path we are considering, I feel like we owe it to the community to at least discuss broadening our options. Looking at the data in the PowerPoint that was gone through, 65% of parents and 60% of staff indicated a preference for in-person school, either total in-person or a hybrid model. The task force also recommended that hybrid models be at least considered. But all we're discussing today is virtual school. We've rolled out a cyber academy, and that's the only other option that we're discussing today. Again, we don't live in a vacuum, and we have to deal with the broader societal issues that virtual school brings up. So any hybrid option should start with retaining virtual option choices and then asking parents who are capable of keeping their students home that they do so. I've heard from a number of parents who said they will remain virtual even if in-person becomes available. Next, we only ask staff willing to teach in person that they do so. 60% of the staff said they want in-person or hybrid instruction. We don't force staff to come in if they don't want to. And then we implement a hybrid learning model with some in-person and some virtual learning, starting with students that will be significantly adversely impacted by virtual learning. Special ed, special needs children with disabilities, ESOL, and pre-K kids to start with. And importantly, for parents who want in-person school, and again, taught by teachers who want to be in school with appropriate health and safety measures. If we successfully implement that hybrid model, then we can start slowly expanding it with lower grades if and when the protocols are in place to minimize risk. So again, while virtual school is preferred in a vacuum, we don't live in that vacuum. As for concerns about the specific plans we've heard so far, I share some of the same concerns Julie raised, that we still don't have the details, and that's what parents and staff have been begging for. One of the main concerns I have is that I've been told that staff have been told, you must come to school, you must do your virtual instruction from your classroom, and that your children are not allowed in school. The vast majority of teachers that taught virtually in the spring worked hard and did the best they could. And it seems to me that we're punishing everyone for the sins of a few or the failings of a few. I really think staff should be given the flexibility to teach from home or bring their children to the classroom if necessary. Yes, all families have to deal with childcare, but the difference is we're telling teachers 3 weeks before school starts about this new requirement. Many have reported that they've scrambled and can't find childcare on short notice, or have also raised concerns about what happens when childcare shuts down for a positive COVID test. And there are several childcare facilities that have shut down on multiple occasions just since March. We need to be flexible and allow staff to teach from home or bring their kids in if they need to. Second, PPEs. We've heard plans about hygiene throughout the schools. I want to make sure that there are enough PPE available for teachers in their classrooms, and that teachers don't have to come out of pocket to try to protect their health and safety. We also need training on PPE usage, not just for staff, but also for visitors and our students, how to wear a mask, etc. Finally, I really strongly urge that we develop some timelines. We identify dates when we'll evaluate local COVID data and tell the public whether we're continuing virtual school or planning to start in-person instruction. As one of our speakers said earlier, people need time to plan and as much notice as possible. Thanks for letting me talk.
Thank you, Mr. Kaczmarek. Dr. Brinkman?
I will not be as long, but I echo a lot of the same comments. I want to piggyback on what Mr. Kaczmarek was just saying about allowing teachers to decide if they feel if it works for them, but also if they feel safe enough to go into a school to teach from that school, or if they do feel safe enough to teach from that school. So that option really does need to be an option for our teachers. I will be definitely supporting this calendar, and yes, I do want it to be extended as soon as possible, depending on the data, as was stated by some of our speakers. Online is the only option for me at this point in time. We can get to hybrid later. I have the privilege of my daughter's godmother being a PhD in viral immunology. She is on a team right now that is tasked with bringing the vaccine to the public. And when I asked her point blank, would you send your kindergartner into our classroom seeing the data in Chatham County? She said, absolutely not. And that's all I needed to know. It is her job. She is on the front lines, and she's still working from home. So at this time, I fully support a virtual learning environment and would love to see us move to a hybrid when those numbers go down and Dr. Davis can come back and visit us and tell us that there has been an exponential decrease in the growth of COVID cases in our area. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Brinkman. Dr. Hoskins-Brown?
Thank you. I don't have long comments, although I appreciate the research and preparation that my colleagues have put into sharing their point of view and summarizing the points of view of folks who have written them. I too have gotten the same emails and phone calls, and I fully support virtual learning. And I do believe that the choice, the idea of the choice, exists in that the recommendation is for virtual learning to start the semester, and not that we have been given virtual learning for the entire semester, as many colleges and some other school districts have already decided to do. I think maybe that is too subtle or too implicit, and therefore not being viewed as a choice. But to me, I am aware and paying attention to the fact that the recommendation did not come for the entire semester. A lot of people have a lot of concerns And I don't want it to be misunderstood that I don't have concerns because I did not orate them when I when I made the motion to accept the change to the calendar. The four that are most important to me at this time are, first, the consequence of asymptomatic people coming to work. That is a big concern for me. Not just because 3 members of my family are high risk, but because the disruption to the school day, if everyone is in the schoolhouse and there is an asymptomatic or symptomatic person who tests positive, and we have to track all of do all the contact tracing and do all the things that it takes to make sure that everyone is safe, that is surely a disruption to the education enterprise for the young people who are in the classroom in that building, at least for 2 weeks, if not longer. I'm also very concerned about people coming to work who have been exposed and who know that they have been exposed, but who feel like they have no choice but to come to work because they cannot afford not to come to work. And what will occur in our facilities for our staff and our young people if that occurs? And I understand a lot of conversation has been said about our young people, and I agree with everything that has been said about the importance of being face-to-face for young people, particularly those who are our special education learners, those for whom English is a second language, those for whom there's no childcare. I understand and I appreciate all of that. But the other thing that I haven't heard us talk about is the fact that we have greater than 50-some thousand people that are going into the schoolhouses. We have the staff that are going there, and I am concerned for their health and safety as well. I'm concerned about little people touching each other. I thoroughly enjoyed myself the last time I read in a classroom, and I was jumped and pummeled with hugs. I don't see little people having an easy time going into a post-pandemic environment. I don't see hormone-riddled teenagers having an easy time refraining from being in close contact with one another in this time. So I'm concerned about that. And I'm finally concerned about asymptomatic students, symptomatic students, staff, and faculty going back home and bringing risk to other members of the community. And so for that reason, I am in support of the delayed start with the virtual format in the way it's been presented, because those health risks, those public health risks are of greater concern to me. And certainly the idea of a preventable illness and a preventable death because of a decision I made today. I'm in support of the calendar as it's been presented.
I have Ms. Hall next.
Thank you. I just want to make an appeal to the community, because the main thing that concerns me, I have no doubt that we're doing the correct thing in terms of the safety of our students and our staff. Until just a moment ago, no one at all today has mentioned the word death. And that's what we're talking about. This is a life and death situation. And I know none of us wants one person to die because we made a decision that we thought was best and it was not. However, I do think in the child care situation where you have people who must go to work and whose lives are in such despair right now, that we as a community, any employers in this community who can possibly help with the child care situation. I know Dr. Levette has mentioned that a lot of our churches are planning to step up to do what they can for people in their congregations who must be at work. Their work cannot be done virtually, to help them with child care concerns. And I would ask that every employer in this county do what they can to ease the burden of employees who have this situation where the schools are not open and they can't come to work because of lack of child care. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hines.
Thank you, Dr. Buck. Well, I've heard the conversation today, and well, let me first say that I will be supporting this this measure today. Another thing I like to say, I have family as well in the public schools. I also have family with preconditions of certain illnesses and going back to school full time. Well, number one, the parents say they're not going to send them back right now. But I want to also also include here, first, conditions must be safe for students, faculty, and work staff if we're going to send these children back to school. Ms. Hall took the words out of my mouth when she said something about death, and I had already written it down. If a child comes to school, becomes ill, unfortunately, and passes away with COVID-19, then how would we feel sending those children back to school before we get this disease under control? Now, I'm as well as many of us on the board of age where we got to be very careful. And I only go to the grocery store, go out when I really, really need to. But when I go out, I see a lot of folk not wearing their masks. Why won't they wear a mask? If we want to lower our situation, let's do what the ones that really know how to handle this. Since we don't have the knowledge. They do. Wear your mask. Encourage your friends, your family to wear the mask. Stay out of places where you're in groups where you're not safe. If you want to bring these numbers down, I'm tired of it as well. And I'm not gonna do a long talk. I'm tired of it as well. But let's follow and encourage others. Wear their masks, as well as when they stay socially distanced apart, and the follow up as far as washing your hands and these kind of things. We have a real problem on our hands. I understand parents need to return to work. Many of my family members need to return to work, but I don't want my family going back to school and getting sick and coming back and giving it to other family members. So some folk want to, quote unquote, have their cake and eat it too. Either we get this virus down, or we will, as a result of it, we'll suffer the consequences. Now, another thing also, let me just throw this out and I'll be done. Hopefully we will have a vaccine within the next, hopefully by the end of the year, but in reality, they're saying by the year 22 maybe. But if we get a vaccine, and many parents don't believe in vaccinating their children, where will we be? You'll have some folk who will go on and do what is necessary, and you have others that do nothing, still carrying the virus on. And also keep in mind that not only we're going to be dealing with COVID in the fall of the year, we're going to have our regular flu season. And a lot of folk don't have those children to take those flu shots. So we got to do something on our parts as well. We got to try to bring these numbers down by doing what we can do. And when I say we, I'm talking about all people. This virus is here to stay. And unless we do what we need to do to bring these numbers down, we're going to continue to have deaths. And it's unfortunate that this virus is affecting my race and a few of the other races as well. So let us do what we can do. And if we can hold school off for another week or so, we don't know how it's going to be. But let me say, Labor Day is coming up. And if folk behave on Labor Day like they did on Memorial Day and the 4th of July, we're going to have another surge. So people, let's do what we can to be able to bring our children back in school. Yes, and as Ms. Wade said earlier, a lot of those students that she talked about, unfortunately, that did not tune in were in my district. And yes, I know they need to go back to class. but let's get the virus down first so we won't have to close down again, shut down again, and start all over. And I'll leave it there. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Howard Hall, and then we can move on, I believe.
Yes, we use data when making decisions as it pertains to budgets, policies, student achievement, retention, promotion, and so forth. I'd like to thank all of the constituents that contacted me via email, text messages, and telephone calls. I understand the pros and the cons for reopening school. We've heard them through our other board members, so I won't bother to reiterate on those. We also understand the importance to have in-person or the hybrid model. 37 years ago during this time, I was a first-year teacher, and I was excited. And I know that many of our first-year teachers are excited, and I understand how they may be feeling right now due to what's going on. I also realize that students learn differently, and their instruction has to be differentiated. The greater impact of providing instruction, of course, is face-to-face as opposed to FaceTime. But the operative word is safely, reopening schools safely. We are currently categorized as substantial spread. Being a former kindergarten teacher, I love colors: red, yellow, green. We are currently in the red. I'm not dismissing in-person or hybrid model. I'm not dismissing it at all. But until we are in the yellow, which is moderate spread, or the green, low community spread, I am in support of the superintendent with the model that has been recommended. We must prioritize the safety of our children and their families with regards to the current pandemic situation as the number continue to increase. Once again, I'd like to thank all of the constituents for their feedback, for their questions and their concerns. We are all in this together. It is important that our families are safe, students, faculty, staff, and the families of everyone, because we are all in the same communities, Savannah, Chatham County. And as I said before, we are in the red. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Howard Hall. Before I make a remark and then ask for a vote, Dr. Levette had wanted to respond to something that was said.
Thank you, Dr. Buck, and I appreciate the rich comments today. We'll be listening intently to the transcript of the meeting. I do think it's important because we have a lot of staff and parents listening to this presentation to reiterate some points that I think may have gotten confused along the way. Number one, there have been several email transmissions to staff about return to work guidance. While some may have received premature communication, I not only communicated with them directly, but I also communicated and shared that communication with you that said there would be different return to work conditions because the pandemic requires adjustments. Individual staff members have indicated to me, I'm upset because I've been told I can't bring my children to school. I must return to the building. I immediately advised principals that that was not the direction given to them. The conditions are different and we must behave differently. Those communications are a matter of public record. I was very clear that the return to work guidance, which I repeated several times today, would be different under pandemic conditions. So I want the staff to know that that is not the intention. Those communications were premature and they will receive different communication. I also think it's important to reiterate that we learned a lot from the spring. We've also received a lot of communication from our students, from our parents of students with special needs or students with disabilities. I will repeat, we will form work groups to ensure that we are indeed delivering a much better approach to instruction for those students who have special learning needs. I'm a special educator, and I'm a child development specialist. I have an affinity for making sure that we serve these children well, and I stand by that. Number 3, when I made this recommendation, I said we would start virtually. I did not at any time indicate that we would be starting face-to-face after Labor Day. I was very clear. I want to make it clearer. We will check the data regularly after Labor Day to determine when we can return to some form of face-to-face instruction. And I think that's important because the staff is working right now to make sure that our spaces are ready for us to move. We are committed to that. You can go into buildings and see that work underway. So I appreciate you giving me the opportunity, sir, to make sure that we're clear on these points. Because what I do know is that people go to these meetings and they come out and quote, you said this, this person said this. Return to work guidance will look different. We actually had, because we were voting on this today, we could not canvass staff before tomorrow. That survey of where staff would prefer to work will launch either tonight or tomorrow. It is ready to go. And we will adjust accordingly. The work groups for those 2 groups that I mentioned have been in all of the communication. It is there for the written record. And again, we will delay to, hopefully, we'll start with virtual, with always a goal to move to face-to-face. I appreciate your attention to those reminders.
I would, as I make some very brief remarks, safety is still number 1 with me. I believe more than probably most anybody else around that kids need to be in the classroom, especially little kids. I think little kids prosper and grow from touching each other and hugging their teacher and learning how to read and doing all the things that youth and childhood is all about. But right now, if I had a child in this school, they would not be going into a school if it opened. My kids are in Valdosta, and they're being done the same way we're doing here. My other kids are in Decatur, and their plan is identical to Chatham County's. I say that because I think we all say that we're open to each other's views, but we all think down deep we know better than anybody else what's really the way we should go. And I would say to you again that safety has got to be number 1. The first time I sat here and read that Susie Smith of Hess Elementary, K-8, had passed away from COVID, I would feel like I had failed in a vote I'm taking today. And that's not trying to be modeling or anything like that. The safety aspect is just too important. The superintendent and I had occasion to sit on that webinar yesterday, and what we really heard was we can do anything we want to. You don't have to require a mask in a classroom. You don't have to socially distance at any age. You don't have to do any of these things. And when somebody wrote a question and said, but what responsibility do we have if there's a death? There was silence on the webinar. The last thing I would say in support of this whole thing is I know that it's an extreme case, and I know little kids don't get the virus very often, but they should take it home to grandmother and parents, because those groups are very vulnerable. I had the occasion on December the 12th to be on a ventilator for 48 hours. I would not wish that on anybody. the fright of not knowing whether you can breathe or not changed my life again. I think we can vote now. You've heard the resolution. All in favor of the resolution, raise your hands, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. The motion passes 9-0-0.